we will save time for questions at the end. We are recording this meeting, so you're probably seeing a little pop-up right there. So that way other members of your community can listen in and learn. So that being said, let's get started. So tonight, what we're going to talk about is just kind of an overview of iReady. So we'll talk about how it works. So what we do is we identify where students are learning. So we're going to talk about exactly kind of where they're placing based on that assessment, and then the support that teachers will have for that in the future. So we'll give you kind of an overview of what's to come in terms of data. So you'll see what data is available from iReady, and then we'll talk about how we connect that data. So we will connect it to instructional resources for your kiddos to use this summer if you choose. And then also you'll kind of get a brief glimpse of what instructional resources educators will have access to in the future. And then, as I mentioned, we'll save time for questions at the end. So we're going to start with how iReady identifies and diagnoses strengths and any hidden gaps that students might have this year. I know this is the #1 question that parents and educators want to know is, you know, where are my students at? Do they have any unfinished learning? And how can I help them? And so this is a great way to be able to use iReady with your within your district. So what is iReady? iReady is an adaptive diagnostic. So what does that mean? It's a K-12 test. So students will see questions within one spectrum from grade K to 12. And adaptive means that when they answer a question right, that the questions get harder. And if they answer a question wrong, then it gets easier. So we want to identify what they know, but we also want to identify what they don't know. So it's very purposeful that students are expected to get about 50% of the questions wrong. And so that is important. I'm going to say it one more time. We expect them to get 50% of the questions wrong, and that is on purpose. So we want to know what they know. And the test takes about an average of 45 minutes. So our younger kiddos takes about 25 minutes, and the older students, it could take anywhere from 45 minutes to an hour. So that's why we say about 45 minutes of an average. And there are breaks built into that diagnostic. So we recognize that kids need a brain break. So you'll see those as well. And then just to give you an example, what you're looking at here is if a student who was in 5th grade started the diagnostic, they would probably start around the end of 4th grade with questions. And then if they get them right, they will get harder questions. And if they get them wrong, they'll get easier questions until we can find their actual performance level. So we will know exactly where they're performing against New York State expectations. So one of the main things we want to make sure you all know is not to help with the test. So the best analogy we can use is when you take your kids to the eye doctor. So we've all taken our kids to an eye doctor at some point, and I know that none of us have ever, you know, sat down with our kid on our lap, kind of like this picture, and leaned forward and said to your child, that's an X, and that's a T, and that's an S. I mean, not only that, we also don't encourage them, like, try a little harder, don't give up. So there's different ways that you could help your kids. And we know we don't do that with an eye test because we know that we want to know what they can see. So we want to get a prescription that matches what they know. And so you'll notice that after they go through the letters on the eye chart, the doctor switches the lenses and says, you know, which is better, this or that. So we're going back and forth, just like the iReady diagnostic does. So we really want to encourage you to make sure that your students have a safe, quiet place so that they can take the test. As I mentioned, there's breaks built in. They can certainly take breaks when they need it, but don't help them with the test. So I always say I am an iReady parent. I have twins that are in kindergarten and a 2nd grader, and it's hard sometimes not to refocus them. So one of my twins gets easily distracted. And so it's hard for me to not tell her, like, focus, don't pay attention. I know you know this. And even those little prompting questions kind of help them focus more than they would when they're by themselves. And again, we want to see what they can do by themselves. So that's the big kind of #1 takeaway, is that we want to assure you that we're just identifying what they know. So this is not like a state assessment. This isn't like the testing we had when we grew up, like high stakes. It's totally different. This is just establishing what your students know. So that was the number one kind of big takeaway for tonight. And then to just kind of explain to you what data comes from this and how do we use it. So what you're seeing on the screen is just some examples of 3 kiddos who are all over the place. So they could all be second grade students, but none of them are on the same level when it comes to specific domains. So we assess these same domains that you're seeing on your screen for reading and then math, we assess them K to 12. So all students will get questions within this realm so we can identify if they're on grade level, above grade level, or below grade level in a very specific area, and then target some instructional resources to help them grow. So that is, in a nutshell, what iReady is. I wanted to share with you an example, and actually give me 1 second because I didn't share my sound. So let me do this. So I'm going to share with you, there we go. I'm going to share with you an example of what a question on the diagnostic would look like. So this is the math diagnostic.
Which best describes the triangle? Use the ruler and protractor to solve. Click the ruler button and protractor button below.
So any of the resources and tools that students would need, like a protractor or ruler, are embedded right within iReady. And they can manipulate them.
Scaling.
And there is audio support so that they can hear the questions. For math, there's audio support for the questions. Reading, it depends on the domain. So it is very specific to the types of questions that the students are getting when they would have audio support. So let's talk about the data that teachers will get that they will use in the future. We thought it would be helpful for you to see what teachers would see. So when they log in to iReady, all of the educators will have access to grade level or their class level information, as I mentioned, how they performed on each of the domains that we assess. You can all tell, I'm sure, by our color coding that the green is our students who are on or above level, yellow is our students who are 1 grade level below, and red is students who are 2 or more grade levels below. And then we take this information and we drill down from there and provide additional resources. So in reading, we take a look at phonological awareness, phonics, high frequency words, vocabulary, and then comprehension for literature and informational text. And then we provide teachers with kind of an overview of how are their students doing. So what you're looking at is what a class would look like in iReady. We can see the students at the top that are in green are performing at the middle of the grade level. And this is actually predictive of New York State proficiency. So we do have some ways to use the data from iReady to predict how students would perform based on New York State expectations. And then you can clearly see as you look at the list that there are some students who are struggling with grade level concepts and some students who are below grade level. So what we can then do just from that one diagnostic is that we'll group students together. So for small group instruction, educators will have access to not only who goes in what group, but we share with them why they're in that group and that they share the same instructional needs. And then I'll show you in a little bit how we connect some resources to that for them. And then the other thing I want you to know is that when they take the diagnostic, they will get a scale score. So what you're seeing at the bottom of my screen right here is the scale score of 453. And what we do is identify growth targets for kids. So we want to see how they're growing through the year. And so that's what you're looking at here. The shaded green section is considered on grade level. And this dark green line is considered that mid on grade level, which is our target for proficiency. So we want to get them above that line. And then we identify for educators how much a typical growth would be of an average student. This is how much they would typically grow. And then we also give a stretch growth so that educators will know we just want them to keep growing. We want to push them a little bit farther so that they can catch up. So we've identified that for educators just from this one diagnostic. And then, as I mentioned, we connect it to some next steps. So here is what they're good at, here is what they need some help with, and here are the resources that you can use to do that. And then throughout the year, next year, your educators will be able to see how much your students have grown, and they will be able to share that data with you. So you'll be able to see, you'll have this great data point now for where they are right now, and then you'll be able to see the trajectory of their growth throughout the entire next school year. So lots of data. and that it helps to drive instruction. So that last part is how do we connect it? So the prescriptions that we get, like the eye exam, how do we connect that to print resources and online resources? So one of the things that after the students take the test, it actually places them, it gives them a differentiated path, and it's called the My Path. And so when students log into a computer, if you choose to use it this summer, your students will get assigned lessons based on their performance within the iReady test. So this shows you that this student started her lessons with phonics at about the end of kindergarten, or middle of kindergarten. And then this blue line shows you how much growth that this kiddo has had while doing online instruction. So that's what you're seeing here. So they'll get a path, and then the educators will be able to see how much they've grown doing those lessons. They'll also be able to see if they passed lessons, how much time they've spent within the online learning lessons, and when they started and stopped those lessons. So educators will get a lot of feedback about what your students are doing. So it's purposeful, and they get the data from that. And then when your kiddos log in, this is what they see. So we're looking at the iReady dashboard for a student, and this is their My Path. So these are the reading lessons that were assigned automatically based on that iReady diagnostic. And so you'll see a comprehension lesson. So there is opportunities for students to read texts and answer questions. And then there's also close reading opportunities. If it was a student who was struggling with phonics, there would be phonics activities here. It will place them exactly where they need for that differentiated path. And then you'll also have access to, as family members, from your student login, you'll be able to see how much time they have spent on iReady. Now, we recommend, our research shows that if students spend 45 minutes a week per subject within the iReady lessons, that's really how they're going to get to that stretch growth goal. So we don't expect them to spend half an hour a day or hours a week on this, but 45 minutes for reading and 45 minutes for math. And you can keep track. Your students can see how many lessons they've passed the entire year. You can see how many they've passed in a row. And then you can also take it the work that they've completed. So again, being an iReady mom, I could ask my daughter to show me her completed work, so I could see when she finished a lesson, that she finished a lesson, and what she got on it. So it was a great way for me to kind of hold her accountable to get her iReady done, so you can see how they're doing, and talk to them about it if you choose. So this is stuff that would be available to you during the summer for some extra support if needed. And then I wanted to show you what one of the reading comprehension lessons look like. So this is an older passage, but we'll take a look.
Night in the Wax Museum by Melissa Sarno.
So what you'll see is that in this instance, as I'm clicking through the text quickly, it does ask me to slow down, so I can't just click through. But for purposes of the example, we'll continue to click through a little so you can see vocab available in English and Spanish. And then also the comprehension questions.
What is Kayla like? How does the author describe Kayla? Tap the sentence with the word shy.
So it's going to drive students back to the text.
Kayla is incredibly shy.
And ask them to find a clue. And then reword the question. So they had to go back, do a look back, find text evidence, and then answer a question that's kind of worded differently, but getting to the same point. So this is how we're keeping them engaged in the text and seeing how they do with that. So this was just an example of what the reading passages looked like. And then we thought we'd also share with you some of the extra stuff that's built in here. So when it comes to math, we know that multiple representations of math is important. So not just, straight fluency practice, meaning just rote memorization, but you'll see different ways for students to show their work. So you'll see multiple representations in the math practice. You will see conceptual understanding using real life examples that your students would find in those online lesson opportunities. You'll also making up words here. You'll also see culturally responsive context. So this is a big, we have a big equity and diversity push. And so you'll see that within iReady as well. And then we have different supports built in for language acquisition. So as I mentioned, vocabulary is available in English and Spanish. Learning games are available in English and Spanish. Some of our lessons are available in English and Spanish. So we continue to roll out right now resources for English and Spanish. And then in terms of parent resources, we have parent letters and such available in multiple languages to support families at home. And then I also wanted to share with you that I mentioned at the beginning that, identifying the learning loss or unfinished learning has been a big question this year. So we have done many updates to iReady this year, and one of them was using that one test to identify what students need to know for future upcoming grade level content. So as your students come back and they take the test again, educators will get updated information to share with them before you teach numbers and operations, before you teach fractions or two-digit addition. Here are the kids, we grouped them together for you, that need a support with this essential skill before you move on with grade level content. So not only will they get an online personalized path on the computer to support any additional learning they need, but educators will also get specific feedback about how to help them with their in-class learning. So the data is very purposeful. So just as a reminder, as I said before, we don't want you to help your kiddos. We want to know what they know. So then people often say, well, then what can I do? So if we don't want you to help with the test, as I said, you could provide a safe, quiet place, whether that is at a family member's house, a babysitter's house, at home, but we want them to be able to concentrate. Also explain that they should try their best, but expect to get some wrong. Like, that's really key. Students who are used to always getting things right, they struggle with this. And we want to encourage them to read the question 3 times and move on. Like, don't spend a long time. This test shouldn't take you, as I said, the average is 45 minutes. So encourage your kids to move on if they don't know it. That's what we need to know. Allow them to take breaks if breaks are needed, and then communicate with your teacher or with your administrators if you have any questions or if you need any help. And that's the best way that you can help as family members. And so the last thing I want to share with you is that we have a ton of information on our free website. So iReady Family Center, you can find overviews of the things we talked about today. There's frequently asked questions. There's parent letters available, family letters in multiple languages, checklists that could go on your refrigerator. Like, there's tons of things that we've created ahead of time to help you do this at home so you don't have to make anything. So I'd encourage you to check out the website. And then again, reach out to the district admin team if you have any questions, and we're always happy to help. So I know that's a lot of information in a short amount of time, but we wanted to save time for questions. Does anybody have any questions? Feel free to unmute, or Ashley, if there's things in the chat that you're monitoring for us.
Angela, so you spoke about how students are placed in their personalized lesson path based on diagnostic results, and it sounds like that's something that Arlington is going to have the opportunity to work through over the summer. Can you speak to what happens if students are not passing lessons, or if they don't pass a lesson in their path?
Yes, so that's a great question. So students can take a lesson twice, and if they don't pass it the second time, we actually shut off that domain, because we don't want them to continue to struggle with online learning. So we will notify the district that the student's domain has been shut off, and then that way an educator could intervene or know that they're struggling. So we still believe that teachers are the best form of intervention for kids. So we want to give them the data and the resources to help them, but we won't let them struggle online. Are there other questions? This is a great turnout. Almost 50 people.
A couple of people joined late, Angela, and I know you addressed some things early on that might be useful to reiterate for those who joined us late. One is the length of the diagnostic, and if it's broken up at all in terms of students getting breaks or anything like that. And then the second piece is like on the math diagnostic, are there tools available if students are needing them for particular items?
Yeah, so both very good points to revisit. So the first one, in terms of time, the average amount of time to take an iReady test is about 45 minutes. Our younger kiddos, K-2, it's about 25 minutes. You know, it's a shorter amount of time. The older kiddos could be from 45 minutes to an hour. So our average is about 45 minutes. And there are brain breaks. There are breaks built into iReady so that we know for attention reasons and just what's best practice that we built breaks into iReady, but certainly if your child needs to take a break, we would encourage them to take that break. And when they log back in, it'll pick up right where they left off. So it won't forget anything. So that is important to know. Was that both questions? All right.
The math tools, please.
So thank you. When kids log in, there's actually a little video tutorial for them. We teach them everything they need to know. So as parents, there's really not anything you have to do to prepare them to take the test. So we will kind of embed that for them. And then any manipulatives that they need for the test for math, rulers, protractors, they're all right within iReady.
I just captured a question in the chat about when the tests will be given for your students. Your teachers will be communicating that with you. And the district has given teachers 2 ways of managing the diagnostics with students. One is to give them a window in which the students will just take it asynchronously. They'll say, okay, friends, go ahead, and now's the time where you can go in and take your diagnostics. One will be for ELA and one will be for math. Other teachers may be asking the students to do it through the course of a Google Meet. And so they may be setting it up in small groups where they'll be there on the screen as students are taking the diagnostics. But your teachers will have more of that specific information for you, so you can reach out to them.
Thanks, Don.
Yes, Carla, the link will go right through the Google Classroom. The link for iReady is in the Google Classroom app waffle. So just as your students have gone to that section of their classroom to access a lot of the other tools that are available, that's exactly where they'll go for this as well. So we're making it as easy for the students as possible.
I also see the question in the chat from Jen about a practice mode. There is no practice mode per se, but it will kind of give them some guidance at the beginning of the test. And we do kind of ask about a standard or a skill that we're trying to identify. We do kind of ask it more than once. So as kids are learning how to do it, we will verify that information. So we're going to ask a question and kind of come back and revisit it if it was something that they struggled with. So we have kind of multiple checks built in. But it's pretty easy to use for kiddos. They just get on and take it, and they have that little kind of demo at the beginning, so they'll be good to go. Don, I see this question about login information.
So two quick questions, and I'll try to make sure, Angela, make sure I hit both of them as we go through. Parents, once the student takes the diagnostic, when they log in, I believe it's in the My Progress section. Once both diagnostics are completed, the parents will be able to see the students' scores, the scale score. And as we learn more and more about this tool as a district, we will be able to provide more information for parents as to what it means and how it's going to be used in instruction. The access to the MyPath information and the lessons that the kids can do over the summer, that's in exactly the same spot as the Google Classroom diagnostic is. So they'll go to exactly the same place. You'll log into Google Classroom, you'll click on the waffle, you'll click on iReady, and you'll be able to either access the diagnostic or the lessons depending on where the students are. Are individual questions timed? I don't know about the individual questions. I do know that students have, they can take breaks whenever they want. Correct, Angela?
You're correct. And it's not a timed test. So no.
I'll also just add to that too, and this is in our family center and the resources that we'll share after, but the guidance really here with taking this test is to read an item a couple of times, and if you don't know the answer, make an educated guess and move on. That communication we've shared with Ellen and Don, and it will come from teachers, but I think if you all are able to reiterate that, we like to say it early and often. So again, I'll just restate that. Reading an item a couple of times. If you don't know the answer, make an educated guess and move on. The last thing we want to see is students spending several minutes on one single item. So that is certainly something to keep your eye on at home.
Absolutely. It looks like so far we've answered all the questions in the chat.
And would you?
Looks like somebody started but got cut off.
Oh, sorry.
There you are.
Yeah, just wanted to know, I heard you say that after a few times, if they don't know the answer, to make an educated guess. Is it better for them to actually try to guess or skip the item?
So they can't skip it. So they're going to have to
Okay.
pick something.
They
Yep,
can't.
just have to pick
Okay.
something. Nope. So they can't skip. And again, it's not no harm to this. Like, I know there's
Okay.
kiddos out there who like to get everything right, but that's our way of knowing this is an area we'll come back and visit, make sure they don't know it. And then just kind of have that data. It might be something they need some extra practice with when they log into the computer.
Okay.
So one little tip for parents, the first question I just saw from Carmen was that yes, all K-8 students will be taking the math and the ELA. So if they're headed to the high school, they will be taking it in 8th grade, and that will be our practice moving forward. For those of you that have been here in the years when the state tests have been administered, if you have students that are, if you have students that are of testing age, one of the tricks that our teachers frequently use with the kids, when we have the state tests, a lot of times they'll have field tested questions on the exams, and the field tested questions are often above the grade level of the students. So some of our teachers have learned to say to the kids, if you run into something that you just don't know, you go, oops, must be a field test question, and move on, because we certainly don't want them perseverating over something that they don't know. So I think reiterating the fact to them that there's going to be a lot of stuff they may not know, and that's on purpose. There was a question in the chat about logging in. Parents do not need login information. It all goes through the students' access in Google Classroom, and that will stay active throughout the summer.
Exactly. I want to be cognizant of everybody's time. We have met our half-an-hour mark, so I wanted to say thank you for joining us, because I know how busy evenings are, especially for family members. So I appreciate your time and your thoughtful questions, and I'm certainly happy to linger here and answer any additional questions. But before any of you leave, I wanted to thank you for coming.
And Ellen and I, as district representatives, are certainly here to answer any future questions that you have. So if anything comes your way, Ellen, I think I kind of took over answering the questions. So.
Well, thankfully we have the same answers. Exactly. So that means that we do know what we're doing on this, at least this part. We are on common ground. But yes, we will. This night was designed for those of you who do have your children participating in learning fully remotely, so that you could really help us with performing the diagnostic piece, right? You will be getting information that all K-8 families will be getting on the what now. The kid has scores. What do I do with it? Right. So we'll be so give us a few weeks to get everybody through the assessments. And then you'll be seeing more information coming from Dawn and I about here's suggestions of what, if you want to do some independent learning over the summer, which of our summer programs will be using this. And we actually have committed to having iReady, both its diagnostic and its learning paths available for you and your children through the full school year of next year, through 2022, so that we can continue to work on the individuals. Yes, there are accommodations for those with an IEP, and that's going to be delved into a lot more next year when we actually get into using this instructionally.
Great questions.
Well, I thank you both from iReady for your time this evening, and thank everybody. You know, we had 50 people at one point, which was fabulous, to help us, help get the best read that we can, so that we set your students up in that just right place for the learning, and not have them be frustrated when they first log on to try to see what path they have been put on to work on some of our skills. And Carol, I do see your note. The actual administration is determined by the classroom teacher. So they'll put it up in their Google Classroom exactly how they're going to be used. They are not used for placement in any classes, Barbara. It's used purely just to place a student in learning paths inside the iReady tool for right now. And then it becomes a piece of information you have about your child and their learning, of course, and the whole path of diagnostics and all assessments for children over years of time. But right now it's just being used to help you get them in a good spot to do some learning. All right, well, I'm going to say thank you again so that people can go about their nights and attempt to have some dinner with your lovely families. And, you know, Angela, Ashley, Dawn, and I will stay on, or at least I can, for a few minutes to answer a couple more questions, but we'll let people start to log off. We are recording this so that we will be able to have that accessible to families.
And Sonia, to answer your question, there'll be 2 general sessions, one for ELA and one for math. But the students have a total of 21 days to take it. Most students will probably do the ELA in one sitting and the math in one sitting. But there are also opportunities for students to take breaks if needed. So the teacher will help manage that.
And Dawn, what I'll do is I'll also save the chat so that we make sure, you know, as we develop future communications for families, that we add in some of those, you know, with
Great.
common Q&A. Make sure we do that.
Dana had a question about the timing. I know that's probably an internal thing, but Dana, I just wanted you to know that if they do need breaks, it will pick them back up.
The teacher will then give them some more time. Yes.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And all of their answers will be saved.
Right. They don't have to go back.
All righty.
All right. Well, then I think we'll call it a night. Does that sound all right?
Sounds good to me. Thank you for inviting us.
Thanks,
We appreciate
everybody.
it.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Bye.